Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul, and I am a nerd. And today we are in the year 2013. I practiced. Make sure I could say that. This is the January 2013 virtual user group meeting for Tabs 3 and PracticeMaster users that we affectionately call the water cooler. Today we're going to talk about something called workflows and how they work, no pun intended, and how you set them up and how you can trigger them and all those great things. Mary Jo is going to lead us off by explaining what they are and how they function. Without any further ado, we will turn it over to you, and I'm going to make sure you have keyboard and mouse, and you can tell us a little bit about workflows.
Okay. Well, that was interesting. Workflows are ways to speed up some of the processes that you normally do. In other software programs, I know that you might be familiar with the term trigger, but we won't call them that in ours. It's a workflow. But what it does is, let's say that you make a change and you want something else to happen. You change a date and you need to let an attorney know that you changed a date, or you close a file and you want to notify somebody that you've closed that file, or you want to create a calendar record, or you want to do these different things based on a field change or something that happens. Workflows can do that for you. So we have two different types. These were brand new, first of all, in version 16. So if you haven't updated to 16, you'll want to do that so that you can have this really cool feature. They did enhance them in 16.2 just a little bit, made them a little bit better, and I'm sure they're going to continue to do so. But there's two different types of workflows. One is user-activated, that you manually tell it to run the workflow and do the process that you want it to do. Or you can have it to automatically be triggered to do it. So as soon as a field is changed, it will automatically go and do what you had asked it to do and make that other, whatever you're doing, happen. So it's kind of automatic. So you can create these workflows in the different file types. So let's say that we have a client file and you have a workflow specific that will happen in the client file or in the calendar file or in the people file or whatever area you're doing. So you can have multiple workflows in different areas. They are all located over here in Quick Click. So if you come over here and you see the little workflow icon here, you can get to your workflows and manage them from here. Every single program obviously has its own Quick Click, so you can have your own little menu of workflows. I'm in the client file right now, so if I were in here, I would be able to see any client workflows that I had. And you can click on here and I could see which ones have been created in the client file, and I don't really have any in the client file. So we're going to go over to the people file because we do have a couple of these already prepared for you. So let's say that I want to add a user to a newsletter list. We have our virtual user group meeting email list that we have, and so if we have a person in our people file that we want to add to that list, we have a little checkbox that actually, let me go into William Purdue here, and I will show you that in our system, oops, I'm clicking here, Paul, I'm not sure if it, do I have the mouse? Help me out there. There we go. Okay, so we have our little contact fields over here, and we have a little virtual user group yes or no box to say whether or not that they're going to get that email. And so Bill, he gets that email. But if I go over here to Paul, I'll notice that he is not checked. I'm just having trouble getting.
Hit your double clicks for some reason. I'll do them.
Yeah, I don't know. All right. So my bug over here for Paul is he does not get that. But I want to add Paul to that. So I can create a user-activated workflow that if I click it, I can say, yes, add Paul to the virtual user group meeting. So I'm going to go back out here to my people screen, go over to my Quick Clicks. Now we've kind of prepared these ahead of time to show you. And so I can go into my workflows right up here, and I've added one called Add to Bug List. And if I click on that, it's going to go ahead and take it and put the check mark in there for Paul. And now I can see that he is on the list. Save it, and now he is on my bug list. If I go back into him, and Paul, go ahead and double click for me again, please.
Oops.
Yep. And now he's got that as a yes. So I
now
don't have to go out. Oh, go ahead.
And I'm going to tell you that normally, we were trying to figure out a good user-activated workflow to create to show you this. And Mary Jo suggested this, and this is going to stick because normally I would have to click here to get to the contact record, because as those of you who use our people file screen know, it's really just a way to point to the contact record. I'd have to open it up. As you can see, the place where the VUG is checked is kind of covered when that happens, so I got to expand it. I got to come over here and check it. I got to close it up, and then I would have set it on. And so this is huge for me. It may not seem all that exciting. It's huge for me. I'm going to set them up for the other lists, the article list and the webinar list, because I can do it straight from here just by highlighting that person.
Now you'll notice that I didn't set it up to automatically just add them to the list, because not everybody is going to be getting the virtual user group email. So I made it a user-activated workflow that I have to actually manually say, add it to the VUG list. But the actual work is already done. Now I can just, anybody, I can go on there and say, add it to the VUG list, and they're added. Now a triggered workflow is something that I do want to automatically happen. I put in a close date, and I want to automatically send an e-note to Paul to tell him that I closed this file. So that's one that we'll look at next. And that, I believe, is over. I'm having trouble clicking. You want to take me over there?
Yep, we're going to go over here.
Okay, so we're on the just the client file. And again, I'm going to put a close date in here, and we'll just put it in there as today. And as soon as I do that and save it, it's going to pop up and ask me to send an e-note to Paul to tell him that I have closed this record. So you could set this up to send an email. You could set this up to, you know, trigger you to check off something else. Maybe we would want to remove them from the VUG list and all the email lists because this is a closed matter. You know, there's all kinds of things that you can do with these workflows to set up an action just by changing a field, or you know, it just speeds up your day. So, Paul, do you want to add to that and tell us how this all works?
Well, I sure would. First, I want to qualify that we had this set to send an e-note. I do want to let you know that an e-note is a feature of Platinum. So it is something that if you were going to send an e-note to in this example, the primary attorney, you would have to have Platinum to do that, but we could have just as easily have set it up to trigger an email. We did set this up to send this e-note to the person who's identified as the primary attorney, which I think is very cool. What that means is that we're able to say, well, for this matter, when it's closed, we're going to tell Scott, and for this matter, we're going to tell Bob, and for this matter, we're going to tell Leanne. You don't have to have a separate workflow for each person. We just set it up to do that. Another thing that I'd like to interject is these e-notes. One thing that's kind of cool about them being used to notify somebody of something is, and we'll show this in a second, we'll show you exactly how you do this, they can be set to go automatically. So in other words, when Mary Jo clicked that date and saved the record, it could have sent that e-note to Paul Perdue without even showing Mary Jo that it was doing that. We have those going on here a lot. We have certain things that when they're checked off, somebody gets notified. And the person who does the checking off doesn't need to know that they're notifying somebody. They do. They know that that's happening, but they don't need to sit here and say, yes, send this note. So we have them set to automatically go. Another thing that I want to point out, and I'm going to go ahead and cancel this. Another thing that I want to point out is that when we use the user-activated workflow, you saw it took us in. I'm going to actually run that again. Even though it's already set to yes. It took us into the record and showed, here, look, we've set this to being checked, but that could also have been set to automatically save and close. And what that means is I could have built this workflow in such a way that we highlighted the person we wanted to get the VUG announcements, we clicked this, and it would do it, and it wouldn't take us to the record to show us it did it, it would just do it. And those are very effective workflows. When you get a workflow built into the infrastructure in such a way that it happens and things move on without any user intervention, very, very cool. Now, how do they work? Well, let's go take a look. I'm going to take this add to VUG list, and I'm going to show you what's going on here. Now, every workflow has a name. Every workflow can be marked inactive. They can be triggered by either something happening to a record, an addition, a change, or a deletion, or they can be user-activated. If they are not user-activated, they can be set to prompt before running. So that means in that one where we put the date in for the close date, it could have said, do you now want to run this workflow that will send an e-note to the primary attorney? And then the user would have had the chance to say yes or no. So that's what prompt before running means. Again, as I have been stressing, workflows that don't interrupt you and ask you to make decisions, that just do what they're supposed to do, in my mind, are the best workflows, so we don't normally prompt before running. So what happened here? Well, in this one, it's user activated, meaning that you just click the little icon that appears over here, the little list, the little entry for that workflow. And what did it do? Well, the action is what defines what happens when this user activated workflow is running. And so if we edit this action, we'll see that it was a change action. Just so you know, here are all the different actions that can be triggered. You can create a new record. You can change a record. You can process a calendar plan template. You can set a bunch of things in motion based on something happening. You can start document assembly. Maybe when you put in the open date for a matter, it assembles a fee agreement, a letter to thank the client, and 2 other documents automatically. That could all happen with a workflow. You can start an email, or you can start or send an email note. You can display a message. You can run a report, write a report. You can launch a PracticeMaster program, or you can launch another program. These are all actions that a workflow can trigger. In my example here, we are changing a record. And when we do, it says, which record are we changing? Are we changing the source record? That would have been the people record, and that's not what we changed. Are we changing a linked record? Yes, we're changing the linked contact record for that people record. You can also have it change a specific record. Here's the automatically save and close. This is what tells it, go ahead and do what I've told you to do, and automatically save that change and automatically close the screen that we saw when we ran it. We actually saw where it had put the checkbox next to the VUG entry. And then we have a place where we define the template. We told it we wanted to change the contact record that was linked to by the RP key. That's the Purdue/P is the RP key for this particular record. That points me back to the Paul Purdue contact record. And when we say define template, what it does is it shows us the contact screen. This is what my contact screen looks like. And it lets us either set a value or look at what we've already set the value to. And we merely set the value of VUG to 1. The VUG checkbox is what we call a Boolean field. I'm going to get a little nerdy on you here. And a Boolean field can be either true or false. And a true can be represented by 1 or a T or the word true. I chose to use 1 because I'm very old and I'm very nerdy. And so to me, 1 means positive, 1 means true. So what we in effect said is that when somebody activates this, it should take the people record that's currently highlighted, go to the related contact record, the Paul Purdue record, and change VUG so that it's equal to 1. And that's exactly what it did. That's exactly what it does. If we go back here and get out of here and close this up, and close this up, and close this up, and go back here, highlighting Paul Purdue, and click on Add to VUG List, it goes to the Paul Purdue people record, goes through to the associated Paul Purdue contact record, and sets VUG to yes, just like that. Now, think about it. There are a lot of things you can do with this. The date closed example, triggering an email or an e-note to an attorney, that's a very common thing to happen. When we go into the main screen in our system and change the contact record, let's say from Paul Purdue to Bill Purdue, Leanne wrote a workflow that says, hey, whenever you change the name here, I want you to remember that we should add a people record. So that was one that Leanne wrote one day, so that if we set somebody up and set them up as a primary contact for a matter, they should also have a people record. We like in our system to always have a people record, even if it's the same person that's on this main screen here as the contact. I'm going to go ahead and make a note here to change this back to Paul Purdue. Paul Purdue main contact. And very good. Now, let's take a look at a couple other things real quick. How do you get to workflows? They're over here on Quick Clicks. There is a Manage Workflows link, if you will, that takes you actually into what we call the Manage Quick Click screen for that particular file. So you'll notice that we don't see the user-activated workflow to add to the VUG list here. The reason being, we have to be on the tab or in the file that we want to develop the workflow for. So if we're on the client screen and we want to activate or we want to change or write this workflow for the people file, we need to be there. And then when we go into Manage Workflows, one of them that will be there is this one, Add to VUG List. I can pull it up then, and I can go ahead and make whatever changes I want to that workflow. Now let's talk a little bit more about this. The other workflow, and I'm just going to change this in such a way that it may get to the point where it doesn't run or it doesn't make sense, but I'm going to use it as the basis for showing you some other things. Let's say that we want every record for somebody whose last name begins with P to display something. That would be that every time something is changed, deleted, or added, we want something to happen. So these are what we call a workflow that is triggered, if you will, as opposed to one that's activated by the user. So let's get a little more creative. Let's say every time we add a record to the people file, we want to remind somebody to also consider making them the main contact on that screen, kind of the reverse of what Leanne did. So if we add a record, no matter what field may have changed, no matter what records are being added to the people file, anytime we add a record, we want to display a message. So I'm going to go ahead and get this action out of here. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to add a new action that says display a message. Next. And the message is going to have a title of remember or reminder. I need to get in here. R-E-M-I-N-D-E-R, and I want it to say, remember to also set the main contact for this matter. Bam. Okay. Finish. Save. And now, every time we add a record here, I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, so I'm going to cross my fingers and hope this works right. We're going to say that Barb is an administrator, and we're going to save it, and bam. Remember to also set the main contact for this matter. It's a reminder, that's the title, this is the body. So, to summarize, we're going to go back here, we're going to go back into Manage Workflows, we're going to go back to this. I didn't change the name, so the name doesn't really reflect what this does. We're going to go over these a little bit more so that people have a bit of a feel for how what they can do. We can create or we can change a record. The one that we just ran where it sent an e-note, that was start or send an e-note. That gives us an opportunity to say who this e-note goes to, and we have a lot of logic in here. We're getting a little nerdy, but we have the expression builder comes up, and we can do things like, say, send it to whoever the primary attorney is, or the secondary attorney, or send it to this particular person all the time. Here's the message. We have the expression builder coming up here too, so that means we can build logic into this message, saying something like, well, if it was this type of matter, we want to say that this matter's closed, and since it's a bankruptcy matter, we have to remember to file this document. Or if it's this type of matter, we're going to say this matter's closed, and if it's and since it's an estate planning matter, we need to remember to set up the calendar plan for future contact with this client about future enhancements to their estate plan, or whatever. We can have something called an e-notify in our e-notes, which means it's also going to attach the related record. So if we were saying this matter closed, the notification that the person got, the e-note that they got, would also contain a link back to that particular matter, so they could just click on it and go back to that matter. This is the automatically send. This means, when we check it, that it's going to automatically send that straight through to the person without the person who did whatever it is that triggered this workflow even seeing that e-note. They may know that it's going to send an e-note, but they don't have to see it. They don't have to intervene. They don't have to go ahead and say send it. Other things we can do. I'm just going to try and run through as many of these things that we can trigger as I can. Create a new record. That means we can create a new calendar record, a new people record, a new client record, a new any record. And then once we get through to doing that, we can actually define the template and say what values go in each of those fields for that new record that we're creating based on this thing having happened. Now, I could go on and on and on talking about how to set these things up, but I'm really trying to give you a feel, so I'm going to keep running through these. You can change a record. When you change a record, it's either the source record. Let's say we were adding a people record, and now it wants to automatically change the record. That would be the source record if we wanted to change the people record. We had one that changed the linked record. For instance, it changed the contact record, which is based on the RP key. So we said when somebody activates this people record related, people file related workflow, we want to automatically change the VUG value in the VUG list value in the contact file, or a specific record. And again, we have this defined template that shows you the screen and allows you to click on any of these fields and decide what that field is going to be changed to based on that action. Moving along, if we go to another new action, we can process a calendar plan template. And I guess I do have a few calendar plans. I was going to say I don't think I have any. For those of you who don't know, calendar plan templates are ways, one of the many ways, to define a list of things that are going to happen based on a certain date. So you could, for instance, based on something happening, set up a workflow that then automatically generates a whole bunch of other dates based on the date the case was opened, or based on the date that this was filed, or based on that date or another date. Moving along, we can start document assembly, meaning that it's going to start a Word document assembly for a specific document in whatever client it is that you were working on. Okay. Another thing, and for those of you who don't know, document assembly, PracticeMaster can assemble documents either using HotDocs or Word. So it can write a standard complaint or create a standard motion for enlargement of time based on the variables that are in the system for that, the data that's in the system for that particular matter. This workflow that would start a document assembly would merely start a specific document assembling for a certain type of matter. So if you created a new client, a workflow might automatically generate a letter to thank the client, or generate a fee agreement, or conceivably generate both those things. Start an email. It's very much like starting an e-note, except you get to define who it's to and from and carbon copied and subject and all that, as opposed to sending an e-note. Display a message, we just saw that. We generated one that automatically, when we added a people record, reminded us to consider whether or not this person should be set up as the primary contact back on the details screen. Run a report writer report. So for instance, this could generate a client summary report. A great way to use a user-activated workflow is on the client quick clicks to have one that says generate client summary. Instead of having to get the client on the screen and go up here and click on reports, report writer, find that report, enter the client name or the client number, you could just have a workflow that's user activated that automatically runs a client summary report for that particular client. I'm almost done here. Launch a PracticeMaster program. This just will start one of the other programs within PracticeMaster. So if you wanted to do something in one of these programs related to a client or a people or a contact record, you can do that. And then we finally have the ability with a workflow to launch another program. Now this requires that you understand how to launch the program. You have to be able to pick it. You have to be able to pass it, whatever variables you want to pass it. Very, very powerful stuff here to be able to have a workflow that launches another program outside of PracticeMaster. Now, tried not to get too nerdy here. It's hard to do in workflows. Workflows are not something that a legal assistant that is not a nerd to the 9th degree is going to be able to do. But there are certain people in certain of our clients' offices that are very capable of writing these workflows, and they don't have to be as nerdy as I've gotten. They can be as simple as reminding somebody to set up a people record when they change or add a primary contact, to as complex as to be able to generate a whole packet of documents and 18 different reminders based on a certain type of matter being set up. With that in mind, I'm going to shut up and ask Leanne if we have any questions.
There are no questions, Paul.
Okay, that either means I got way too complex and too nerdy, or I gave a good overview and now people are starting to think about different ways that they can use this. Now, Mary Jo?
I'm sorry, Paul. I was going to just send them a quick heads up that if they wanted to get more information on workflows, there is a tutorial, a web tutorial out here in the training videos. So if you just go to Help and Training Videos in PracticeMaster, it will take you out to a web page with all of our training videos out there. And there is one on workflows. So if you'd like to see a little bit more about that or, you know, watch the video.
Very good.
In here, right down here. And it is 4 minutes, almost 5 minutes long. So that's
much more succinct than you and I suppose.
Probably tell you everything we just did in 5 minutes. No, I doubt that. I doubt that. But that's another place to go for information.
We can also help you with workflows. If you have a quick question that you didn't think of before we hung up, then you can always email me, paul.purdue@attorneycomputersystems.com. And Purdue is like the school, not the chicken, P-U-R-D-U-E. So paul.purdue@attorneycomputersystems.com. We can always answer questions after the fact. A lot of people hang up from these things and then they think of their questions. Leanne tells me that someone does have a question now.
Yes, Mary's going to ask a question. Mary, I'm going to unmute you.
Mary, okay, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I have a general question. We have a main client with, say, 50 subfolders. That client will have the exact same 3 people, no matter how many files, subfiles they have. In workflow, is it possible to set up something that will say, okay, take this new file anytime I open it and automatically put those 3 people on all the files that are under this main client? In other words, it's like a copy-paste, as long as anything before the decimal point.
I'm going to answer that from a workflow perspective and then from a different perspective.
Okay.
From a workflow perspective, workflows are triggered one-off. Workflows don't have looping logic, so you cannot be on the .00 matter and say, hey, take all the people that are on the People tab and duplicate them for all 50 matters, because it doesn't have the ability to loop through them.
Okay.
Now, with that said, we could write a workflow that you would get on the .01 matter and duplicate, and then on the .02 matter and duplicate. That would be triggered for each of the submatters. Now, that's if you were to present me with that problem and say you have to write a workflow to do this, I could write a workflow to do that. That's about as good as I could get it. If you presented me with that problem and said fix the problem, I wouldn't use workflows. In fact, we have a client that just did this. They had a matter that had 27 people set up under the People tab. And then they wanted to do exactly what you say. I don't think it was for every submatter. I think it was for, they had 52 other matters that they needed to duplicate this team of 27 people. They were identifying things like adjuster, court, judge, their primary and secondary and assisting attorneys and their paralegals, who was on the other side, who the client was. They had these 27 people set up. So we wrote a report that exported those 27 people records, and then an import definition in the import data wizard that would pull them in. And so what you would do then is you would take that report, generate it to a CSV file, change the number, and then pull it in, change the number again, pull it in, change the number again, pull it in. Now, 3 people being replicated among 52 matters, that's still a bit of work. For them, it was more like 27 people, and it was a godsend to them. But those are the 2 ways that I would solve that. Unfortunately, workflows are not perfect yet. Don't know if they ever will be. They're brand new. We're hoping that the ability that you are asking for, or that you're describing right now, where we can say, hey, let's loop through all the submatters, or let's loop through all the matters for where primary timekeeper is Bob, or let's loop through this or loop through that. We're hoping that that logic will be added, and I'm certain that workflows are being enhanced in version 17.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, Leanne?
No, nothing else, Paul.
Okay. Well, ask your questions after the fact. Also, Mary and anybody else that's thinking of something, your tip for the day is there is an email address at Software Technology called Wishlist. And if you, Mary, if you say, gosh, it would be great if workflows could do that, which is, I'm sure, what you're thinking right now, send an email to wishlist@tabs3.com, and when you do that, we always tell people to blind carbon copy or carbon copy me, and then I will take and ask for that same enhancement from my perspective, and so you've got it coming from both the dealer or the reseller and you, the customer or the client. So shoot off a quick email to Wishlist saying it would be neat if a workflow could loop through all the submatters and add these records or make these changes to all the matters, not just one at a time. And like I say, if you carbon copy me, I'll ask for the same thing. That's how things get changed. We have a client that wanted something just a couple weeks ago, and they already have it. Theirs was kind of a pressing need, and it was something that they discovered that really should have been different because of a variety of circumstances. We asked for it, and we got it. So that's your extra tip for the day. Send those suggestions to sti@wishlist@tabs3.com. No more questions, Leanne?
No.
Okay, we're going to end it there then. Everybody have a good rest of the afternoon and a good rest of the month. We will see you next month. We haven't quite decided on those topics. We'll have them decided by this afternoon. So if you're curious what the next bug is going to be, the next virtual user group meeting or the water cooler is going to be, by tomorrow the website, attorneycomputersystems.com, should have that information up there. Thanks very much. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.